like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Good evening. In a moment, headliners first, the latest headlines. And the new Prime Minister has been appointing his top cabinet today, with 6 ministers reappointed to the same roles. And that includes Jeremy Hunt staying on as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Still unclear, though, whether he's going to be publishing his fiscal plan for next Monday. Then there's Dominic Raab. He's returning as Deputy Prime Minister and has the additional portfolio of Justice. James Cleverly remains Foreign Secretary, and Ben Wallace retains Defence. And Suella Braverman is again Home Secretary, less than a week after she resigned over a breach of the Ministerial Code. Grant Shapps is Business Secretary, and Penny Mordaunt was the last appointment of the afternoon, remaining as Leader of the House of Commons. Other appointments that ran into the evening: Kemily Badenoch, who returns as International Trade Secretary, and Michael Gove, who returns as Levelling Up Secretary after being sacked by Boris Johnson in July. And the Leader of the Opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, has said the new Prime Minister will not deliver for working people. But the Prime Minister has been speaking this evening to the Ukrainian President, underlining the UK's continued solidarity and support for Ukraine against Russian aggression. Downing Street said Mr Sunak and US President Joe Biden have also had a call this evening, saying they're looking forward to working closely together. Earlier on today, in his first speech as Prime Minister after he saw King Charles at Buckingham Palace, Mr Sunak vowed to fix what he called the mistakes of Liz Truss's leadership. He pledged to place economic stability at the heart of his government, but he warned the country should brace itself for difficult decisions ahead.
I understand how difficult this moment is. After the billions of pounds it cost us to combat COVID, after all the dislocation that caused, in the midst of a terrible war that must be seen successfully to its conclusions, I fully appreciate how hard things are.
Well, let's not forget the former Prime Minister who bid farewell to Number 10 today, saying brighter days lie ahead. In her final speech from Downing Street, Liz Truss praised her government, saying they had acted urgently and decisively as she spoke of cutting taxes. She also urged her replacement, Mr Sunak, to be bold. Well, in other news today, 6 men suspected of being part of a people-smuggling gang involved in illegal channel crossings have been arrested in France. Several boats, as well as over 100 life jackets, were seized from a garage in northern France. The group's accused of storing boats which would have been used by migrants to travel across the English Channel to the UK. This comes as 2 residents in Dover told GB News this evening they'd found a teenage migrant in one of their bedrooms after 30 migrants went missing last week. And new figures show the price of low-cost groceries like pasta, tea and cooking oil have soared. The Office for National Statistics says budget items have increased by around 17% over the last 12 months. And that comes as inflation returned to a 40-year high, with prices up 10.1% in a year. Food prices were the biggest driver of higher living costs last month. That's it. You're up to date online, on TV and on DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Headliners.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Headliners. I'm your host, Simon Evans. Tonight I'm joined by two of the funniest comedians around who happen to pass their DBS checks to an acceptable standard. We have Leo Kearse and Steve N. Allen. Good evening, gentlemen. Nice to see you back, Steve. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
I don't know quite what sabbatical was enforced upon you, but I'm glad to see it's all cleared up now.
Restraining order, that kind of deal.
I saw you on another channel.
As if I would ever be available to
I'm sure it's more like a brief Braverman. That's all you've had, isn't it? And you're back in position. So let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages. We start with Wednesday's Daily Mail. Leave it to me, Your Majesty. Looks as if they're about to engage in a bit of Turkish wrestling or something there, doesn't it? Quite obvious that the king would be able to take Rishi if it came to it, I think, just through sheer heft, if not agility. At his age, Wednesday's Telegraph, mistakes were made, I'll fix them. I can't imagine who those mistakes were made by. It's probably some previous Labour administration. Borrowing costs recover after mini-budget chaos in boost for Sunak. Wednesday's Independent, voters demand election as Sunak claims mandate. That is obviously a reasonable left-wing perspective on the whole thing. Wednesday's Guardian, PM's reshuffle gamble on first day in charge. We'll be taking a look at that reshuffle very shortly. Wednesday's Financial Times, Sunak confronts profound crisis. He really must get on with his job rather than doing all that sort of nonsense. Price of favourite pasta dish surges 58% as inflation hits poorest hardest. Wednesday's Express, undaunted Rishi vows to fix mistakes. Slightly more positive spin. Wednesday's Metro, kings can only get better. Kings can only get better. It's not actually, if you read that, it's hard to see how that isn't borderline treasonous, but never mind. Wednesday Star, shake it all about, in and out, in and out. Whoa, Rishi does the hokey cokey. Whatever. And those were your front pages. We will now take a look inside. So our first story tonight, and in the immortal words of Joe Biden, Rishi Sunak is now Britain's 57th Prime Minister. He's dishy, he's Rishi. What does the Daily Mail say?
Well, at least Biden, had a go at pronouncing his name. I'm impressed with that. So Rishi Sunak plunged the knife in on Liz Truss today after pledging to fix her mistakes and win back the public's trust after taking over as Britain's 57th Prime Minister.
Yes.
She's already dead, Rishi. You don't need to kick her anymore. Just let her be. But he gave a sombre speech. He warned of difficult decisions to deal with the profound economic crisis facing the country, saying he understood that Britons were suffering and, mistakes had been made.
Yes.
And he's trying to pin it all, the last 12 years.
Yes.
He's trying to pin it on Liz Truss's...
2.5 hours that she had, basically, of a budget that wasn't even enacted, was it? I think most of it.
Yeah, and in fact, the previous Chancellor, who was Rishi Sunak, might actually have something to do with it. So, some of the mistakes he made, well, he backed Boris despite knowing that he wasn't the sort of diligent, competent leader the country needed. He's a big fan of big spending projects. He loved lockdown, the furlough scheme, eat out to help out. I mean, he did try to end furlough early, but, implementing it in the first place. And, of course, he backed Brexit because he thought it was going to be economically beneficial. There's lots of reasons to back Brexit, but economics is not the reason.
It is odd, isn't it, Steve? That, well, I say odd. Is it questionable that he seems to have a reputation, beside all other sort of political... Most people think of him as economically competent, the safe pair of hands, I suppose, the Goldman Sachs background and so on. People think, well, at least he's inside the tent pissing out. But I don't know. I'm not sure that he has demonstrated that, to be honest, in his time in office.
I suppose his time in office is not a very good sample on which to try and extrapolate, unless we spend all of our lives having lockdowns and pandemic, probably the plural.
But his instincts and sentiments were tested and found to be of a certain stripe.
Yeah, but look at the contrast. And this is where he does really well. All he needs to do is compare and contrast to what Liz Truss did in a very short amount of time.
Yes.
And all of a sudden he looks really competent. I have a slight sympathy for him, the way the newspaper says that he stuck the knife in, he also had a go at Boris Johnson by saying that he'd have integrity. Wait a minute, if he can't use the word integrity without that being read as an insult to Boris, and can't imply that he'll be there for longer than 40 days without that being a slap across the face to Liz, he can't say anything.
I suppose there are different ways of doing it, and politics is politics. Obviously, to a large extent, it's just whatever works, isn't it? But I mean, when, for instance, Michael Heseltine decided he'd have enough of Thatcher, first of all, you resign from the cabinet. And then once you've situated yourself and unwrapped your sandwiches on the back benches, then you set about, saying what you really think. There was a sense, I think they used the term sticking the knife in to Boris because he was clearly briefing behind his back. He was responsible for a lot of the leaked photos taken from an unnamed window at number 11, with an adequate view of the parties and that sort of thing. There was a sense that he wasn't really doing it in a,
Well, go on.
I'm going to say, even having the website was brought into question. Was it that he registered the domain ready for Rishi early on? So either he was going to run or some other kind of project was going to come out.
Possibly some sort of takeaway service. What did you think?
But I mean, this is Rishi really needs to ensure his own survival and any chance of winning the next election. He needs to bring the Conservative Party together, and that means, sort of bringing in Boris supporters, pro-Brexit Boris supporters, and also bringing in Truss's side of the party who want it to be an actually Conservative party instead of just New Labour with a different badge on it. So, by sort of alienating them, with his opening speech, he's not doing that.
He hasn't done that, and you're absolutely right. We'll come on to it right now, really, with the new cabinet. But it is going to be New Labour versus New Labour at the next election, as it stands, isn't it? So The Guardian now, and it's time for an aggressive reshuffle, it says. No, not Steve with his hands in his trouser pocket. I'm sorry, they're dragging their stuff. It's Rishi's new cabinet. Who is in and who's out, Steve?
Yeah, it's fun, this, isn't it? If you read this article and take out any paragraph that includes a phrase similar to looking forward to spending more time with my constituency, it's like a one-page thing, because it trims out. But the big ones, Jacob Rees-Mogg, out. He will now be on the back bench. He'll have to take his little lie-downs on the back benches. Oh, I'm sure they're still
Do you think that's an ecumenical matter?
Then I think, you've got Braverman being an interesting one because this was not a resignation on principle. This was, whoops, I broke the code. I'm a security breach. But actually not that much of one. But still, this is a very...
Cummings tweeted to the effect that was clearly nonsense and that people did that day in, day out. So it obviously was a cover. But whether it was a cover that she was kind of get out round the back and come back in. I
think coming back in would have been easier if she'd have resigned and saying, no, this version of the government isn't going to work, and then you could have come back.
I would agree with that, absolutely, But I suppose the events were moving fast, weren't they, at that point?
Loads of other ones in here. Michael Gove's back, so it's nice that this is the episode that we can see, because in the future when he brings down this Prime Minister, this is what we can pin it back to.
So he's the one, you think he's more of a snake than Sunak, in fact?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you're right. This could be the double snake.
Yes. The double helix.
And Therese Coffey's been appointed to Environment Secretary. Such a shame, because her being in charge of health, the jokes
her cigars and so on.
Yes. Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? In a nation that might have a problem with its obesity and maybe its drinking and who knows what, she was doing the research, and I respected her for that.
Absolutely. I'm perfectly happy with Gove being back in for what it's worth. I think it's very competent, and I'm one of those few people who will stand up. I think I liked what he did at education, certainly, although I do think he's missing a limb without Cummings. That was the dream team, to be honest. He knew how to they knew how to manage each other. I'm a little bit less excited to see Raab back. I thought that I never felt particularly...
And Grant Shapps, I mean, what's he going to do? So he's business secretary. He's going to presumably reduce tax on pyramid schemes.
They're they have a flat pack air about them, don't they, Raab and Shapps and that ilk, but never mind.
I think Ben Wallace, so he dropped out of the PM Prime Minister race pretty early on because he didn't want to do it, and I think that means we should make him do it. Because anybody who really wants to do it will be bad. Yeah, no, that's true. He's probably the single most popular minister in his role, I think, Ben Wallace, isn't he? So the country has a lot of confidence in him. Yeah, and it's good to see Suella Braverman back because, I think she'll restrict and reduce any temptation with the new government to just, increase immigration massively to give us a shot in the arm to the economy. So she probably is the clearest blue water between them and New Labour at the moment, would you say? I don't know. Yeah, well, she finally gets another crack at her dream, where her dream was to see these planes take off, and for a while it looked like she'd have to privately fund it. Yeah. But now she can get back into the business of doing it. Braverman Air.
Next up in Wednesday's Independent, our currency reaches its highest level in a while. Leo, this is exciting news. Maybe we'll afford to go on holiday after all.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't read too much into this. So the value of the pound rallied on Tuesday as Rishi Sunak was confirmed as Prime Minister. So sterling lifted 1.9% higher to 1.149 cents against the US dollar after the new Prime Minister started to confirm appointments. I think this is, it's saying that this is because Rishi was appointed is reading the tea leaves.
Yeah.
The euro also rallied by, pretty much the same amount. And,
right.
I was
so
saying,
a slight weakening in an absurdly strong dollar. Really.
Exactly. We see these fluctuations in the currency markets. It's not a huge tilt. It's 1.9%. The euro rallied by over 1%. So yeah, I don't think it's much to do with
Rishi. It's like trying to tell the time by watching the second hand, isn't it?
Yeah.
These things,
I mean, I guess it's good that it went in that direction instead of the other direction this time.
Oh no, not that. Now what?
but also pointing out you don't have the evidence to make that analysis doesn't disprove it. So actually, it could be a slice of both.
Yeah.
It could be that a slight dip in the dollar, and also, maybe they are grateful to suddenly not see, the trustonomics or whatever they call it.
I think it's possible. There's always that sense where I can't remember if the phrase is buy the rumour and sell the fact or the other way around, but it's certainly once, they always overreact to something, and then once all the bad news is in, it pulls back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a little bit of the elasticity. I think if they'd stuck it out, everything would have been fine, but there we are. For those of you who don't remember, there was a lady called Liz Truss, and for one brief moment, she used to be our Prime Minister. She is now destined to become quite a difficult pub quiz question in the future. Anyway, she was a great chess player as she killed the Queen. Yes. The thing she managed to do, which were all stated quite clearly in her 2003 Student Union President that nomination address, I think, weren't they? The Republicanism and everything else.
Still a Lib Dem as well, infiltrated, work your way up and bring the Tories down from the inside.
It's Miller's Crossing, isn't it? The political version, yeah.
But, this advice for the new PM, her speech was anything but contrite. And there's a part of me that thinks if you've managed to do something that adds to your Wikipedia page the phrase the shortest serving PM and shortest PM as well, I Googled it earlier.
Absolutely.
You'd imagine you might have a whiff of contrition, but there's nothing about it. She uses in the speech a quote by Seneca, which always reminds me of the Carry On films straight away. However, it's
what did Seneca say in a Carry On film?
It's their version of the character was called Cenopod. So kept you regular. It's the same one as the sage.
Is that infamy?
Yes.
You've got infamy for that one.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
But she said it's not because things are difficult. Well, she didn't say. She quoted. It's not because things are difficult because we do not dare. It's because we do not dare that things are difficult. I'll throw a little bit of Henry Ford at you. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And I think she's disproved this because the legacy of Liz Truss is that realising just if you believe in yourself, no, it's not enough.
Yeah.
So maybe don't go all out on this. Even her speech when she sacked Kwasi was of the vibe, I'm sorry, ... that you don't know how right I am yet.
Yes.
So...
Also, I hate phrase. It's a bit like that one. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing.
Yeah.
It's not true. We stop playing because our knees hurt. You know?
That's a rather more depressing thing to put above the kitchen.
I might get that on a T-shirt. Another trip down memory lane now. This is in the Times, and Britain will rejoin the EU. Sorry, no, a European military alliance. Oh, that's fine then. Sort of like having to go to an ex-girlfriend's birthday party so she doesn't cut all her hair off in the shower. Wouldn't you say so, Leo?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I guess, it's chipping away at some of Brexit, but this one kind of makes sense. I mean, we're going to rejoin. Britain's going to rejoin an EU military mobility group after it left Brexit, so it can move troops and equipment more quickly across the continent, according to the Dutch Defence Minister. So the military mobility project aims to improve the speed at which troops and kit can be redeployed across Europe, especially during times of war. The countries that join do not have to go through the same amount of red tape to cross borders and do not need the same approvals. So sort of like, open borders, but for tanks.
It's like Erasmus for squaddies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's charming.
And we're already in NATO, which is a bigger military bloc, and the sort of free movement and also the standardisation of weapons, makes sense. And I think when the Cold War ended, the threat receded. So, that sort of led to, individual nations getting this sort of nationalised. Oh, we don't need to be with the rest of Europe. But actually, Putin's shown us that, we do militarily. We can disagree on other stuff, but militarily it makes sense.
We can defend our ultimate borders wherever they happen to be at any given moment. I suppose that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It says increasing the speed you can move these things across Europe, especially during war times. I'd say mainly during war times.
Yeah.
If it's not war, just use Amazon Prime. That's fascinating. The idea that you can...
Is there a kind of special military Schengen?
Yeah,
is that the idea,
exactly.
essentially?
And this is why I think we should use this to our advantage, because if we categorise sausages as ammunition, we could fix the whole Northern Ireland.
Absolutely. Almost everything we do make and sell in this country can be deadly if misused, or even just mishandled.
You can eat sausages faster if they're being fired into your mouth.
Yes.
With a machine gun.
And there's probably a way to get around the vegan restrictions now as well. They probably have different. I don't know whether are there different restrictions on whether you're allowed to use meat in armaments.
I thought you were going to say vegan food. What's the allowable percentage of pork in a vegan sausage?
I think that's how the Indian Mutiny started, wasn't it? If I remember rightly, the pork fat on the bullets.
Oh,
remember
really?
that? Yeah, they were expected to. Use their teeth to... there was some part of the loading up of a rifle that you had to use your teeth.
Right.
And a rumour spread that there was pork fat on the shells.
Right.
It was one of those half-remembered facts that will probably kick off. Anyway, here's that pesky ex-girlfriend again, this time offering to pay our heating bills. That's kind of a... What is going up?
Yeah, back to the EU. The EU fears that energy cap will then mean we get cheaper electricity. So President Macron told that France would be the biggest beneficiary of subsidised gas, but Britain would benefit too. Oh, I bet that hurts. It's a meeting of European energy ministers in Luxembourg, and it says that it warned in a confidential paper. I mean, not that confidential.
No.
Got it right here for some reason.
About as confidential as the chats I have with my wife, usually, by the following morning.
But in a blow to France and 14 other countries. The paper then says that Britain will be a big beneficiary of cheaper electricity. I'm trying to get my head around how it happens. I think because you have cheaper gas is used to make electricity. There are rules that mean that you can't charge different things as it's being exported.
Everything at the moment rises to the price of the most expensive thing, doesn't it? It's like if we were all comedians, we would all be able to charge whatever Jack D charges. It's a great system.
Well, this is slightly different to this. So this just means that they've got to... There's an agreement in place that means you've got to export electricity at the price that you're charging in your own country.
OK.
So that means that, if they're subsidising it and giving it to their citizens at a cheaper rate, they've got to sell it to the UK at that rate as well. And this is one of those deals, a trade agreement that's made, when things are good, without thinking through what are the possible consequences of, the spikes.
So this was made long before. It was post-Brexit, you think? This post-Brexit, but obviously before the war.
Yeah.
Well, something good has happened involving Britain and France. I think that's a nice place.
The subsidies are idiotic anyway because they just increase consumption. So they're going to increase European use by between 5 and 9 billion cubic metres. So it's going to cost government's money and it's going to increase consumption at a time when you need to reduce consumption. So
as soon as Truss announced that she was going to sort of take the hit with the price, I think everyone around the country is opening the window over the radio. That's good. We can have fresh air and warmth after all, thank goodness. Coming up, that is all for part one. After the break, join us for a sexual harassment, Kanye West, Peter Tatchell's visit to Qatar. Those are 3 separate stories, I think. Stay tuned. See you in a minute.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens,
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans. I'm joined by the wonderfully wise Stephen Allen and the healthy-looking Scottish 19-year-old we've ever seen. It's Leo Cass. So, the Times now, they said it was a myth. No, not female orgasm, but the gender pay gap. Do female barristers earn less, Leo?
Yeah, well, according to this study, female barristers earn over a third less than their male counterparts, as concern grows that methods of distributing cases discriminate against women lawyers. So in some areas of the law, barristers are closing the earnings gap, but male barristers on average earn about £80,000 annually in fee income, while women earn about £50,000. And it's not the same across all fields of the law. So in personal injury field, women earn 53% less than men. Yep. But some areas of the law, such as defamation, women have overtaken men and are earning 36% more on average.
Women are very good at defamation, has to be said. That is their special topic.
Well, we saw with Rebecca Vardy and Colleen Rooney. But yeah, my wife's a barrister, so I better tread carefully. Normally I'd be like, well, this is not. It's because they're lazy. But I don't want to sleep on the couch tonight. So no, she spoke. She actually was at the bar in Ireland, where they have the referral system is you're referred cases by a solicitor, and there it's it's much more nepotistic. Here there's the chambers system, which removes some of that,
but
it's still
because they used to call it.
It's still an incredibly like real old boys network, and a lot of exploitation and sort of sexual harassment and stuff like that.
I do know. I mean, I know a few barristers. I studied law at university. I wanted to become a barrister, and so I've kept an eye on it. And I tell you, it's been a hard profession in lots of ways for men and women over the last few years, especially the criminal bar. They don't earn anything like. I mean, it used to be a very solidly middle-class profession. Well, both those fees, what you were saying, 50 grand or 80 grand, those are not really commensurate with the sort of status in society that they might once have expected.
And those fees, I mean, that's the average. So criminal barristers earn very little. I mean, a lot of the fees, don't even cover your bus fare into, and you're doing like really tough work.
You often spend hours every evening preparing for the next day's, which is then a hard day's work. Then you give loads of your money to the clerk, and you basically have to pay rent for the Chamber's offices. Steve, do you have any...
No, I think this is it's an important story because it's not like the other stories that are similar to this, where they will be comparing people who straight away you would say you've got part-time workers, cleaner versus CEO, easy to try and see where the maths falls down. But in a sense, this isn't about how much you're getting paid. This is about how the work's being dished out.
Yeah.
Which is harder to measure. The only metric we have on it is the amount that they're earning. But it does look like the problems in there are waiting to be solved.
But I know, again, from my friend's experience, they can have days where they earn maybe 100 quid. For very nearly a full day's work, you have to travel to some court, a couple of hours on the train, submit a plea, basically, and come back again, and that's it. And there's other days you put on as the deputy to a QC in a murder trial, might take 3 weeks, and you might be earning 700 or 800 quid a day or more.
So even on the bad days, you earn a lot more than a comedian.
If there are the Jeff Whiting days, though, there are those gigs. And you are the driver. So next, in The Independent now, a surprise turn of events, and the Qatari authorities have taken issue with an LGBT rights protest. I say LGBT, or is he just LGB? I'm not sure. Did you see this one coming, Steve?
Peter Tatchell. Actually, to be fair, we're quite late in the process of this for there to be protests. We knew this was happening as soon as they were given the games. Why weren't the protests happening then?
Well, I think it's because if you go over to Qatar and protest, you can be beheaded.
Yeah, but at least he's done it now. But you're right. I mean, look, this is the thing. We never should have been having football in there in the first place. Very much for these issues. But Peter Tatchell staged a protest. The authorities have said that he wasn't arrested, but there's a claim that he was arrested and detained for 49 minutes. I think there's an interesting thing that's happening. All of the accusations are that Qatar, with its terrible human rights record and rules, are trying to sports wash their reputation. And it's worth thinking that it's just not working. Every single story we're seeing is about how bad they are. Every single time we talk about it, you're being reminded, oh, no, that's that place that has these terrible rules in it.
It's a kind of Streisand effect, isn't it? You know that one where famously when you try and suppress a story, it draws more attention to it, essentially, And they have, I mean, you're right. I think they've tried to... like sweep away their record on human rights, and in fact, that is exactly what everyone has been taught. Even though they've hired David Beckham as their ambassador,
but that's why you also, I mean, the 49 minutes worth of detention ends with a handshake. Apparently, I think they know that they are looking really bad. So actually, this is a good time to go over there and do a protest because they probably won't behead you. They are worried about the PR. Bit of a risk to take.
But the reality of the World Cup being in Qatar is that, it's going to make billions of pounds and, loads of fans are going to go over there. All the football players are going to go over there. So nothing really, I mean, this gets talked about in the papers. Nothing really changes.
Are you confident about that, the fans going there and the money? I mean, the money, I assume, is from the licensing anyway. That's probably a done deal, right?
Yeah, no, fans are still going over there. I mean, there's not going to be any alcohol or, certain, lascivious behaviour allowed. But, they're still going to go and watch football because people are idiots. But, I mean, what we're seeing is football, so much in this country really follows they have pride flags everywhere, rainbow laces, they take the knee. But then when it comes to the actual reality of it, they're happy to go to Qatar. They'll take the knee in Qatar on the actual, death sites of slaves. And that's, I just can't get my head around it. I don't know why people are so incensed about slavery that happened 400 years ago, but they can't, they can't do anything about, they won't say anything about slavery that's happening right now that they're complicit in.
It's a tricky one. I would, to their defence, I would say if you're a young sportsman, you're a young footballer, you're not going to see that many World Cups. It's very difficult for them to say, sorry, I have my beliefs and this is difficult.
No, that's no defence whatsoever. That's like, you can't support... If you're going to... Or do that, but then don't, when you're playing Premiership football, don't pretend that you're like, we're waving the flag for pride or we're taking the knee for Black Lives Matter, because you're not. You're just doing that because it's politically expedient for you to do it in this country because we've already fixed those problems.
There's a lot of truth to that. And it has to be said, the Premier League now, I mean, it's phenomenally awash with money to the extent that Europe is trying to create a Super League in order to balance things out. A lot of that money is dirty in this country as well. A lot of it comes from, usually oil-rich states in the Middle East and so on, and that's, you know, it's very hard if you're a professional footballer now to avoid some sort of taint.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm not.
Very wise. You stick with GB News. Next in Wednesday's Mail, the Home Office wants people to cause a distraction to combat sexual harassment. That would explain the jacket Leo is trying to Does it work,
I can
Leo?
disguise myself against paisley curtains. So new government guidance has come out and it advises witnesses to sexual harassment not to join in. You shouldn't do that now. So you should attempt to create a distraction or use expressions or body language to deter would-be abusers. So the campaign urges people to directly intervene. They've got 5 methods. So you can use statements such as "that language is not okay," or "it is against the law to do that," as if you're, you know, a Japanese student learning English. And other suggestions include showing disapproval through body language or facial expressions and creating a distraction to interrupt what is happening. I don't know, maybe juggle some oranges or...
It's almost more like an anthropological observation of some things that the British do, isn't it?
Yeah, well, this is the whole thing.
We observe them creating a distraction.
This whole thing is like, you know, basically our only weapon against sexual harassment and rape is to stand near it tutting. You've just got to tut. And apparently
This
that's
is the British way. I can't believe these are suggestions rather than things that have been observed from behind sort of one-way mirror.
It's like they're trying to add to the nerd level that we've got, like, it's against the law. What you want to do is sidle up and say something like Batman style. You want to whisper kind of a, "the lady said no," that kind of... Get that in there.
I dare you.
And one of the suggestions is to get your phone out and film it, which, I mean, if that doesn't put off the harasser, then you're just complicit. You're creating some sort of revenge porn.
Create a TikTok account specifically. Well, fair play to them. I have had one of these ads is on YouTube, actually, and I watched it earlier in preparation, and it seemed to have come out in March. I don't know whether they've just been rebooted, but... I mean, it was like a gang in the park, you know, and one bloke starts wolf whistling and the other guys are all like, "Hey, dude, that's not OK." Brings back terrible memories. In Wednesday's Guardian now, world-famous rapper accused of anti-Semitism decides to change name to Kanye West Bank, presumably. Anyway, Adidas aren't too happy with him, Steve.
Yeah, previously on Kanye West. So he sent an Instagram message, I believe it was, saying, "I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people." Yeah. And it's not gone well for him. Who would have thought that... So he's lost the Adidas contract, which adds to the other contracts.
Having said on a live interview that I can be as anti-Semitic as I like, not me, this is Kanye or Ye or whatever he's now called, maybe, I don't know if you pronounce that. And he's saying, "I can be as anti-Semitic as I like, and Adidas can't drop me." That was obviously a little bit previous.
Yeah, it's wrong, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It turns out they can. A German company as well. So
a German company that shot the Wehrmacht, I believe, as well, during the Second World War. No, shortly afterwards. I must be careful here, but I think they were established shortly afterwards. But Adidas, the story, right? The two brothers. Is Adolf Decimal or something like that? Yeah, and then his brother, and he split up and he set up Puma. The Puma and Adidas are both from two warring brothers. They're competitive,
like those Twix adverts.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But they were Nazis, you know. They were actual Nazis during the war.
Yeah. But they did. I mean, they might still be Nazis because they took 10 days. 10 days to be like, no, actually, wishing death on Jewish people is bad, you know? The reason they might have been so reticent to actually dump him straight away is they're making huge amounts of money from the alliance with Kanye West. So the partnership brought in nearly $1.7 billion in revenue for Adidas in 2020.
Good grief. And have you seen the shoes as well? I had a look at some.
They're ridiculous. They're like something of a science fiction movie.
It's silly shoes, or like actually almost like Aladdin shoes or something.
Yeah.
They're kind of weird.
Yeah. But like everybody says, you know, we must be understanding and tolerant and open up about mental health. And when Kanye West opens up and displays his mental health issues, everybody piles on him. It's like, you know, pick a lane.
Oh, God, I wonder if he's going to still help Trump with his campaign in 2024. Roses are red, violets smell sweet. British businessman jailed after taking phone to Himalayan yoga retreat.
That's right.
Go
Well
ahead.
done on that. You've got a future ahead of you as a slam poet. A British oil executive was jailed in India after bringing a banned satellite phone to a yoga retreat. I mean, obviously, he needs to get that selfie of him doing, crouching tiger, hidden dragon, whatever it is. But Fergus MacLeod, who works for the oil giant Saudi Aramco.
Sounds like an alias of you.
I wouldn't spend the money on yoga retreats. He spent a week locked up in an Indian jail after taking the phone to the Himalayas. He didn't know they're illegal. And these are basically they're banned because they were used in a terrorist attack because they can connect. The government can normally shut off mobile phone networks by shutting down the masts, but these connect to satellites. A week injection. He should have a lethal injection. Let's look at the evidence. He was going to a yoga retreat, so that's a terrible thing to do. Works for Saudi Aramco, terrible company, and he's got one of those massive phones, like a yuppie from the 90s.
Yeah, I'm in a retreat.
Yeah, it's very peaceful. Yeah, it was. It was before you got here,
I went to one
Fergus.
of those in the not yoga, but a meditation retreat, just like spontaneously. I was on a bus from India to, this was my gap year, I was about 24, backpacking around. I met a couple of Canadians who were on their way to, and I ended up in this place. 11 days of absolute silence, just 3 simple meals a day and 11 hours of meditation, long before the invention of mobile phones, it was 1991. And I tell you what, I would have killed for a satellite phone if I'd known that such a thing was available. But we had to watch spiders.
Whenever I watch films where someone's in jail and they're threatened with solitary confinement, I don't see it as a threat. I'm such an introvert. I do on all the tests that the idea of having I would have thrown. If someone gave me a phone on the way into that place, I'd have burnt it. People, fewer of them, please, near me. That's all I.
Well, you can go to these retreats, and they do have them in this country as well. I'll give you some addresses afterwards if you want. What's his name? Jack from Twitter goes to one for a month every year.
Is this just a guy called Jack?
He's just called, that's his @Jack. That's
the guy started.
Twitter, not just a guy called Jack who I met on Twitter. No, what is Dorsey, isn't it? Jack Dorsey. Yeah. And the other one is Noah Yuval Harari, I think is his name. He wrote *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus* and stuff. You know, he's a kind of thinker and futurist. He goes 2 whole months a year. He spends, fully, and these people are super successful, so there can be something to it, possibly.
This is why I don't mind a long drive to a gig.
No, that's right.
As long as there's no one in the car.
The chatter quietens. Coming up, that is the end of part 2. Join us in just a moment for pronoun madness, trigger warnings, and toxic friendships. As if you didn't know that would be involved. That's 2 or 3 minutes, in fact, now, I think, with our extended ad break. See you in a moment.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
So, welcome back to the final part of tonight's Headliners. I'm still your host, Simon Evans, and I am still joined by Steve and Alan and Leo Kearse. Tonight's next story, the High Court, high stakes and presumably high parents. An 8-year-old trans boy will not be mispronounced. Here is Steve with Wednesday's Mail.
Do you know what? The weird thing is this story actually isn't about pronouns. It's all about nouns.
Is that
proper nouns?
Proper nouns, yeah.
Names. But that's, I suppose, it's just the way that everything gets abbreviated for newspaper shorthand. So, Christian school teacher loses High Court bid to overturn dismissal and possible lifetime classroom ban after referring to an 8-year-old pupil. But it is deeper than this. It's not just using the wrong pronouns once and bosh, this happens. So she, for her Christian beliefs, didn't want to refer to a child by the gender that they decided to be. I think that's all very well in saying it. But the dismissal comes because she gave away more information than she should. She effectively identified him by reporting this. So I mean, in the story, it does say the teacher, known as Hannah, to protect the identity of the child. Which having to refer to this person by a different name is an irony in there, isn't there? All the way through.
Is that going to be for life now? Do you think she'll have to go by another name?
Depends if Labour get in.
Hey?
Depends if Labour get in or not.
At this point, it doesn't, does it? I don't know whether Penny Mordaunt's views on this will rise above. Yeah.
But, I mean, it also means that this woman's definitely not called Hannah. So if you do have a teacher called Hannah, you're fine. But if your teacher's not called Hannah, maybe it's time to look into it. But, yeah, initially suspended for failing to carry out requests.
And just to be clear, this is an 8-year-old, a biological female of 8 years of age who is now identifying as a boy, has chosen a boy's name, and Hannah, as we will call her.
Barry, as we now call her, just to really stir this one up. Said no because of her Christian beliefs, but it's not just about that. That's when there's a meeting.
And then she started making it known to the rest of the world.
Yes, she then was dismissed for taking legal advice. This is the thing that's, I'm not legally trained, so of all of us on this panel, probably the least one to say it. But with legal advice, would there not come a level of confidentiality which means you've actually not given away the person's
I would have thought so, yeah.
And you've also got a human right to seek legal advice.
Yeah, but in doing so, gave away confidential information. I suppose the argument could be you can seek legal advice, but you keep some of that information that is confidential.
Yeah.
Do by speaking to your representative. I don't know. But that's why the sacking has come about. And it's a High Court bid to overturn it has been denied.
I mean, I was saying, I don't know, it does. Sometimes you feel like these are vexatious clients or these things escalate much more quickly than they need to, and there should be a way around it. I just wonder if there isn't a gender-neutral term that can be used for a child at the age of 8 that the child might feel is acceptable as well. Do you know what I mean? That doesn't brand them as the gender they're not comfortable with without having to go full Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I've got a solution that I imagine you'd like.
Yes.
Referring to the kids by their surname. I don't know why.
Yes.
I imagine shouting that. It's a you thing.
Yes, that'd be perfect. Curse, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And why aren't teachers still doing that? Instead of all this cuddly wuddly, oh, we're going to refer to you by your first name. No, they're just like little, I can't even say the word, they're there to be beaten into shape, so they're, inoculated.
They're unformed, they need socialising, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is interesting, I mean, of all the slippery slopes, that's not one that I'd ever previously considered. It starts with moving from surnames to Christian names, and before you know it,
Well, I think all this affirmation of anything a kid wants to do, that's the opposite of what adults should be doing for kids. You should be telling kids, like, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And if they say
they're empty vessels, they need things pouring into them.
Absolutely. Which Jeffrey Dahmer tried with drill.
That's true. The Dead Poets Society, of course, is to blame for a lot of it as well.
And au revoir les enfants. I was just thinking of that, the teacher being led out of the classroom. And also I think, although this isn't strictly related to pronouns, you don't get to choose your own pronouns. They're not for you. They're for us to refer to you when you're not here.
In your absence, exactly. Yeah. They needn't bother you at all. In the Times now, Bob Geldof says he doesn't like criticism of white saviours. He later added he also doesn't like criticism of the Boomtown Rats and people called Bob. But
yeah. I mean, he basically might have said, stop being mean to me. So basically, Stacey Dooley was filmed hugging a Ugandan toddler.
Who is that?
She's a TV person.
OK.
She does like Stacey Dooley Investigates, I think. I don't know why I'm looking at you.
Did Strictly for a while as well.
Oh, she did Strictly. I don't know what Strictly, but
Strictly Dooley.
Strictly, so she was on Comic Relief. She hugged a Ugandan toddler, and it led to a backlash against white saviours who are accused of spreading stereotypes from the colonial era. So saying, Africans are hopeless and they need, white people to come in and save them. But Bob Geldof has hit back this criticism, calling it trite and silly, because, of course, everybody accuses him of being the white saviour who comes in. And actually, they've got a point when they criticise Bob Geldof. So he raised all this money for charity. Obviously, it's great that he did it, and it was needed at the time. But charity, and the charity he was involved in particular, has been notable for, in some places, being accused of propping up dictators and warlords. It also undermines the markets in those countries. So if you suddenly flood the market with this free wheat, the people who are bringing the wheat to that place, their livelihood is gone. They're going to stop bringing wheat to that place. So then when the charity pulls back, the country can't sustain itself. And it also makes people dependent on Western aid, which I think is a terrible thing.
It did create a certain sense that we all had a warm glow about us for having sort of saved Africa, didn't we, for that Christmas? It was a bit unearned.
And some of the stuff, like in his song, he's like, oh, there's no water, there won't be any water flowing in Africa. Are there no snow in Christmas this Africa?
No, it was
Kilimanjaro,
absurd.
there's like loads of snow. It's a big mountain.
Geophysically illiterate as well, absolutely right. But what I've felt with Geldof is quite interesting is that he has been quite an extraordinary, I mean, he's a very active, successful businessman who created this thing. I don't know if
he needs to be more active in the shower. He needs to spend some of that 150 million on soap.
He remains quite a vociferous and provocative individual, I suppose. That's quite a healthy thing.
Set up the production company 24?
Planet 24, and they made The Big Breakfast. Yeah, I had a job there many years ago. That's right.
I would like to take back everything I said about Bob Geldof. I had no idea he was a powerful man in the media.
He certainly was. I don't know whether he must be getting on a bit now, must he?
Yeah, it didn't say his age in here, I don't think. It just says that, he doesn't like criticism of so-called white saviours. No word on how he feels about Mondays.
Who's afraid of extreme classicalism? No, not Andrew Doyle after a couple of pints. It's the University of Warwick. And here is Steve with Wednesday's Telegraph.
Yes, Warwick, by the way, my second choice. Didn't go there. No nightlife. Closest thing to nightlife is a 24-hour Tesco nearby.
My wife
I thought you were an introvert.
Warwick University is in Coventry, though, right?
Yes.
We know that, yeah.
No, I went to the open day, but I like the idea. I presumed I'd be successful and have friends. Didn't pan out that way. But the university, trigger warning over Victorian novels, extreme classism. Here's the thing, though, I'm not sure whether they are trigger warnings, because they're also called content notes.
Yes.
So if something's got content notes saying, oh, this includes, and it says here, it describes as... a portrayal of 19th century Manchester potentially upsetting for students. They should see modern-day Manchester. Kidding, love the place. But they actually have stopped calling them trigger warnings. So the only people calling these trigger warnings is the Telegraph.
Yes.
It kind of has a reason to spin it as a trigger warning. I don't particularly feel the need to have content notes, but if that's what you do, if that's what you need to have...
It's saying it's got this one that may arouse feelings of hatred to one class and keen sympathy with the other. Well, that sounds like a book, doesn't it? That's a sort of...
unless
like a storybook.
Yeah, unless you're indifferent to everything that happens on every page.
There is something, of course, that does that. Funny enough, I mean, that is something that I think a lot of adults do find slightly disturbing about student-aged kids, is that they do seem to have that flat affect, that kind of inability to actually identify. I wonder whether they prefer a literature that doesn't expect them to take sides. I don't know.
Well, also, these content notes are giving away what happens in the story. They're like, oh, this contains deaths. You're going to be really worried. Oh, there's a butler who did it.
Yeah.
You know, it's giving away what happens in the story. And I think they are. You know, they do sound like trigger warnings. They say misogyny recurs throughout. That's not, you know, that sort of...
Yeah.
That's warning people that there's going to be misogyny rather than saying this is interesting because it's got misogyny.
That's how you'd read it.
Yeah.
It's a search term for you, isn't it? If they can make it search engine optimised, get this other stuff out of it.
You would expect by the time you got to university to study English that you'd be prepared for the fact that there'd be some unacceptable and dated views in 19th century novels.
Yeah.
It's just patronising, isn't it, really? But never mind, we'll move on. In The Guardian now, 22,000 missing books in Peterborough. Sounds like a day in the life, doesn't it? Deeply shocking. I didn't think there were any books in... No, that's just... Someone had to read them all. What's the story, Claire?
Libraries in Peterborough are holding a fine amnesty. So that's an amnesty on library fines, not just a good
Not a really
amnesty.
good one, yeah.
But they're trying to recover 22,000 missing books. So they've got 10 libraries, 22,000 missing books because people got them out in Peterborough and didn't get to the end.
That's a very encouraging haul of people taking books out, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean...
Never reading them.
Yeah.
Not as good a punchline as mine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But yeah, so they're saying they're gonna you're not gonna get fined for all the missing days if you bring the books back. But maybe people have died from all the horrific, misogynistic, classist content without maybe they didn't have trigger warning.
These were pre-trigger warning editions. You can barely get your hands on these days. It's like Mein Kampf, trigger warning, contains struggle. Entire book.
It's almost a shame that they're doing that. I understand that.
Contains anti-teacher sentiment.
But if they actually did find the people, we could have fixed the economy.
OK, well, one last story, very quickly. Having a boy is tougher on the brain. What have you got, Leo?
Oh, so, apparently it's tough. Your brain shrinks and ages when you have kids, and it gets worse. It gets worse if it's a boy than if it's a girl. I've got a girl, so, you know, my brain's not going to degenerate as quickly.
I think I've got a boy. I can't remember.
That seems to answer it. Well, that's all we have time for this evening, folks. You've been absolutely delightful. I've been Simon Evans, been here with Stephen Leo. Tomorrow night, Andrew Doyle with some guests. No idea who, but it'll be fun. Good night.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.